I was always the one who noticed first, a dwindling balance, a late payment, the subtle shift in Dad's voice when he was about to ask for something. I watched everything quietly. That was my role. That was who they expected me to be. So when the bank alert arrived at 2:17 a.m., I didn't panic. I just stared at the number. $301,567, gone. At first, I assumed it was fraud, a hacker, a glitch, but the longer I looked, the more I knew. A different truth settled in, one I didn't want to name yet. I sat up in bed, my chest tight, not with fear, but with the sharp sting of recognition. My name is Claire Whitmore, I'm 31, working in hospital administration. I've always been dependable, until I realized they didn't count on me as family, only as a resource. I called my father before I could lose my nerve. He answered on speaker. I heard my mother laughing in the background, an old country song playing in the kitchen. Dad, something's wrong with my account, I said. My card is maxed. Did something happen? A pause, a clink of glass. His voice came back, heavy with annoyance. You're always so dramatic, Claire. The family needed help. Your mom's meds went up. Haley's car broke down. We were behind on the mortgage. I stayed silent. Then Mom chimed in, her tone light but sharp, the same one she used when I forgot to call on her birthday. Oh honey, what were you going to do with all that money anyway? Buy yourself a cake and candles? Celebrate alone? We had better plans. The silence afterward felt louder than their words. Final. I spoke calmly, then don't ever call me again. I hung up, not out of rage, but because deep down, I knew they had let go of me long before I ever let go of them. Betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it sounds like laughter in the background and a country song playing on low. I didn't cry, I didn't throw my phone or scream. Instead, I sat staring at that number. Then, I opened my laptop, not for revenge, but because I finally heard the words Dad once told me after I paid off his second DUI. Family doesn't keep score. It worked because I wanted it to, so I stopped keeping score. But that night, I started reading the ledger, the real one. I logged into every account tied to my name. Mortgage, mine. I had co-signed after their bankruptcy, just until things stabilized. They never did. Auto loan, mine. The truck my sister drove proudly, only in her name because I took the risk. Insurance too. Medical loan, mine. Approved through my employer benefits. Mom had used my identity like an oxygen mask, quietly, repeatedly. I clicked through each account with the same careful calm I once used to set up autopay. Back then, it felt like love, like duty. Now, it felt like a contract I never agreed to sign. So I started clicking. Mortgage, paid off and closed. Truck, called the bank. Repossession initiated. Medical loan, frozen. Financial hardship claimed. Each click felt small, but inside me, it roared. I moved on to the shared accounts, Netflix, Hulu, the family phone plan, utilities in my name, all the silent 4 lines they'd hooked into me. I disconnected them, not out of spite, but out of clarity. They didn't ask because they believed they didn't have to, because I taught them that they didn't need to. How many times had I said I'm fine when I wasn't, just to avoid conflict? How many birthdays had I paid for while they forgot mine? How many late-night transfers did I make while they slept in a house I kept running? They called it family, but the way they used me looked more like a running invoice. That night, I didn't sleep, but I didn't cry either. Instead, I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it History. For the first time in years, I started saving the receipts. I realized I stopped being a child in that family on a cold Tuesday in spring when I was 12. I remember the flickering kitchen light, not dramatic, just dim. Mom sat at the table, staring at a pale yellow envelope she hadn't opened yet, the electric bill. She didn't cry at first. She'd sigh, tap the envelope twice, as if waiting might change it. Claire, she said without looking up, can you get the change jar from the closet? I did. She counted quarters and dimes, her eyes wet but no tears falling yet. That was her way, quiet sorrow. We're going to be okay, she said. But I knew we weren't. That afternoon, I walked 3 blocks to Miss Lorraine's salon. She once told me I folded towels better than her niece. I asked if she needed help. She looked at me a moment too long, then asked, what do you know about sweeping up hair? I said, enough. I swept every day after school for $4 an hour, not because anyone told me to, but because someone had to. That summer, the lights stayed on. Mom called it a miracle. Dad said, that's our girl. always steps up. They never asked why I did it. And I never told them that sweeping floors at 12 was the first time I felt safer being the adult in the room. Some kids have first recitals, first trophies, first kisses. I had my first responsibility, and it never really stopped. Looking back now, I realize that was when the shift began, not suddenly, but gradually, quietly. The child they were raising turned into the roof holding up their house. The scariest part? I thought that was love. I used to keep their sweet messages, the "we're so proud of you" texts, the "you're our miracle" voicemails. I'd scroll through them when work felt heavy or my birthdays passed quietly. Mom once wrote, "We don't say it enough, but you're everything we ever hoped for." I used to cry reading that, not out of sadness, but because it made me feel seen, like the extra shifts, the quiet sacrifices, meant something. But words don't hold up well next to actions. While they were calling me a blessing, the bills kept arriving in my name, the passwords were mine, the rent notices, the insurance renewals, the overdrafts, all mine, never mentioned until it was too late. That night, I opened the history folder again and scrolled to a bank statement from 2 years ago. Charges for Mom's birthday dinner, a dinner I wasn't invited to, Haley's new tires, streaming upgrades, wine. None of it large enough to make a scene, but it wasn't the money that broke me, it was the quiet assumption that I would always catch them, the belief that if I didn't, I had somehow changed. If I stopped paying, I was cold, selfish, disloyal. They'd say I'd forgotten where I came from. But I remembered exactly. I came from eviction notices taped to our door, from watching Mom fake seizures to skip co-pays, from Dad calling borrowed money gifts so it wouldn't feel like debt. And at some point, I became their redemption story, the proof they needed to show the world they weren't failures, their miracle child who doubled as an endless line of credit. Every Facebook family photo, I was tagged. Every success story, I was the headline. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was just a ledger entry. That night, I took screenshots, printed statements, labeled folders, not out of revenge, but because gaslighting is easier when there's no paper trail, and I was tired of being told I was lucky to give. So I started keeping receipts, literal and emotional, because I needed something solid when the idea of being loved no longer felt real. 3 days later, a voicemail came. I was folding laundry, listening to the dryer hum, when an unknown number popped up. I let it go to voicemail, then pressed play. "Claire, it's Mom. Your dad slipped on the porch steps, bad break. He's at county, no insurance, and they won't operate unless we pay part up front. I know you're upset, but this is serious, this is family, please call us. 3 minutes, that's all we ask." Her voice was thin, rehearsed. I knew that tone, the one she used when she needed to pull me back in, not with love, but with urgency, not with apology, but with guilt. That phrase again, "this is family," as if those 3 words erased everything that came before. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop, checked my budget, my accounts, my emergency fund. Yes, I could pay, it wouldn't ruin me financially, but it would reopen wounds I had finally started to close. So I opened the history folder again, scrolled through screenshots, the overdrafts they never mentioned, the birthday I spent alone while they celebrated without me, the $38,000 they withdrew on my birthday, calling it helping the family. And I understood something that felt both freeing and cold. This emergency didn't belong to me. It belonged to people who had treated me like an ATM for years, people who never apologized, only demanded. So, no, I didn't call. Instead, I wrote a check, not to the hospital, but to myself, a deposit into my peace fund, a promise that I was allowed to choose me, that boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity. And the guilt? It knocked, like it always had, but this time, I didn't answer. I texted my cousin Amanda, who had been forwarding me their group messages all week. I wrote, "Tell them I hope he heals, but I won't bleed again to fix their wounds." She didn't reply, just read it and went silent. But this time, that silence felt like air. The next day, the group chat changed names. It had been Whitmore Family Thread, now it was Core Crew. I wasn't in it anymore. No text, no notification, just a screenshot from Amanda, no caption, she didn't need one. That afternoon, the screenshots kept coming. My mother posted a Facebook status, "It's always your own who hurt you the deepest." No names, but the comments filled in the blanks. "You raised her too soft. She owes you everything. Kids today, no respect, no heart." Then came the private messages. From old aunts I hadn't seen since high school, from neighbors who once borrowed sugar but now passed judgment like gospel. Claire, I know it's complicated, but they're still your parents. Your mother is heartbroken. You should be ashamed. Ashamed, that word echoed louder than any of them intended, not because I agreed, but because for most of my life, I had been ashamed to say no. Ashamed to feel tired. Ashamed for not being able to carry everyone without collapsing. They weren't mourning my father's injury, or a lost relative, they were mourning their loss of access. Access to my money. Access to my time. Access to the version of me who never asked for anything in return. And I let them mourn, I let them scream, grieve, lash out, because grief is really just love with nowhere left to go. But I wasn't their daughter anymore, not the one they had built out of silence and duty. I didn't need to argue, I didn't need to explain, because this wasn't my funeral, it was theirs. The death of entitlement. The burial of the obedient Claire they needed to survive. And I wasn't sending flowers. The invitation came in the mail, not a group text, white envelope, gold trim, handwritten. It was from Ava, my younger cousin, the quiet one. She didn't ask questions or forward gossip, just a note: if you come, come as yourself, that's all I want. So, I went. I didn't buy a new dress, I wore black satin, not to mourn, but to mark something, not a funeral, but the closing of a door I no longer stood behind. When I walked into the reception hall, I felt them before I saw them, my parents, Dad in a rented tux, leaning on a cane like it was part of the act, Mom in a too-tight dress, draped in borrowed jewelry and regret. Their eyes found me like I'd just arrived to ruin something. I didn't flinch, I took my seat with Ava's college friends, laughed at jokes I didn't know, ate the chicken, admired the centerpieces, and danced. God, I danced. Because joy wasn't a decoration that night, it was defiance. Halfway through dinner, my mother passed behind me. She didn't stop, just let her fingers drift across my chair, her voice low. You look different. I turned to her, calm and steady. I am. She opened her mouth, but I lifted my hand, not sharp, just final. I'm here for Ava, not you. Her eyes didn't fill with grief, they filled with loss, the kind that only arrives when you realize the bridge is gone and the person on the other side isn't waiting anymore. Later, during the toast, Dad scanned the room, his glass raised, his eyes landed on me, searching for a nod, a smile, some sign I was still playing along. I didn't blink, because peace isn't pretending nothing happened, peace is knowing you don't owe anyone a return to the role they cast you in. I left before dessert, no goodbyes, no last words, just a quiet walk to my car and aching heels and shoulders that didn't. At home, I opened my laptop, logged into one last forgotten platform, autopay, one click, and I took my childhood off repeat. The next morning, I sat with lukewarm coffee and a list, not a to-do list, not debts, just a list titled things I never signed up for. Co-signing the mortgage, covering Mom's dental implants, paying for Haley's car insurance just for 3 months, keeping the family Netflix for 6 years, answering 11 p.m. calls because no one else would, patching every hole with my time, my money, my silence. I moved through accounts like muscle memory, bank, cell phone, streaming, that old gas bill still in my name since 2019. Each account carried a memory I didn't want but couldn't forget. The birthday dinner paid on my card. The night Mom sobbed over losing internet, and I covered it, again. Dad's voicemail: just send what you can, we trust you. Trust, that word had always been a leash disguised as love. I opened the last account, the oldest one, a bill I'd paid since 16, back when I didn't know better. I stared at the number. It wasn't large, but it wasn't about money, it was about the story. The story where I was responsible. The story where I was good. The story where I kept everyone else upright while my own life cracked. With one quiet click, I removed my name, no confetti, no confirmation email, just a pause, a breath. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and whispered to the room, that's the last one. And it was. Because the weight doesn't lift until you stop holding it in your name. My birthday came, no texts, no cards, no guilt. Then, a knock. It was Ava, holding a cake, no photos, no performance, she just smiled. You were never the problem, she whispered, you were just the first to escape. We lit the candles, we didn't make wishes, we just breathed. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet click of a door that used to open for everyone but you. And this time, when love arrived, it didn't come with a receipt. I didn't walk away to punish them. I walked away to keep myself, one quiet boundary at a time. I used to think love meant sacrifice. Now I know real love never makes you prove your worth to keep it. If you've ever chosen peace over permission, if you've ever stopped picking up the phone, not from anger, but survival, you don't owe anyone an explanation. Just a single word, or a single breath. I know I'm not the only one who left, and finally started to breathe.